What's up, everybody? It is Tim. Welcome to the late afternoon show. We are live. We are just jamming, vibing, waiting for folks to hop on. Let me know where you're joining us from in the chat, your city, state, country, what have you. We will see it. We're going to give it a few minutes for folks to join the party. Let's go. Hey. What's up, Wayne? My boy. Every single time. Love to see you, brother. Hey. What's up, Joel? What's up? If you're curious about what this vibe is Masego Trap Scat. Trap Scat by Masego. Go check it out. It's a cool little vibe. We'll give it a few more seconds. We'll jump into something else. Not yet. You gotta wait. I'll tell you when it comes. Roseville, California. What's up? Welcome, Roseville. All right, that was a little bit of a cool jazzy vibe. We're going to turn it all the way, going back to the music. You guys might have saw me dancing earlier today to some Nigerian Afro beat. That's the vibe we're going to move on to. This is called I Am Me. This is some Nigerian vibe. So if you want to chill on a Tuesday evening, this is by a guy named Mayoroku. Hey. Hey. You guys want to dance? All right, come on. All right, it's dance party time. Oh yeah, come on. Oh yeah, come and dance. Let's move this out of the way. Come on. Hey. Oh. Hey, show are comfortable. Hey, oh, I understandable. Hey, get out of here. I am. Hey, get out of here. We're just having a dance party. Please feel free to join in. We're getting ready. We got Ernest Barbaric here with us today. I cannot believe I actually got this guy to come on the show. So we are getting everybody warmed up. Ernest, he's right there in the chat. We just vibing. Hey. All right, we're gonna do our intro song. You know the song, right? No. No. You know our song? All right. We're about to get started. In 30 seconds. Let us go to our late afternoon song. You know the song.
Late afternoon.
Yep. Here we go. Hey. All right. You know it's all about those good vibrations. Memphis in the house. What's up, Megan?
Hello.
Let's go. Vibrations. Okay, I gotta sit down. I gotta start the show. Say bye, everybody. Say bye. Bye. Okay. Okay, let's start the show, guys. Let's start the show. Oh, guys, my wife is out of town, so it's daddy daycare and showtime. So we have to. Is this live? Yes, Vincent, it's live. What's up, Vince? How did I get here? You clicked on the link, dude. What's up, Riverside? What's up, Memphis? What's up, Roseville? What's up, Atlanta? We got Canada in the house, guys. I am excited. We're going to finish this out real quick. Electric magnetism in the air, out of nowhere. All right, we're about to start in 10 seconds, guys. Let's go. Hey, hey, hey. I've got to make you mine. Ladies and gentlemen, Jairus Tucker. We got Jairus in the house. What's up? What's up? You have joined us for another edition of the Late Afternoon Show. I am your host, Tim Olaure. Normally I say Olari, but I am out here trying to use my real pronunciation of my Nigerian name, Olaure. Tim Olaure here in the house. We have a meaningful work beast today. Mr. Ernest, I was out here researching. I'm trying to figure out, how do I make my content more relevant? How do I make sure I'm hitting all the salient points? How do I make sure that I'm staying on top of what is current as it relates to meaningful work? So I'm researching, I'm looking up, I'm saying top podcasts for professional development, for meaningful work, for leadership development, executive, and all these things. And the art of meaningful work just boom. I was like, the art of meaningful work? Who's this? And I listened and I listened and I listened and I heard the guests that were on. I heard his perspective, his own journey to discovering what that was. Kind of stepped away a little bit, came back, and I was like, yo, this is the full embodiment of what I am talking about. I crafted an email. I was like, yo, I got to figure out. I know this guy is busy. Let me find some creative way to get this guy to come through. And he agreed, and I was just elated. And so without further ado, now, guys, this is not a normal show. My wife is out of town. She normally handles these guys. And so they are here with me. If you guys would be so kind, go and play in your room. Go and play in your room and close the door. Close the door. Oh, thank God for good kids, man. Thank God for good kids. And so without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I want you guys to welcome with an applause emoji. You can either put the clapping hands in the chat. You can put the like button. We'll see it. And the love button. We'll see it on the post to give some love. And I even have, ladies and gentlemen, Ernest. Ernest!
That's awesome. Man, you made me miss my kid. My kiddo is currently in Interior BC with my wife, and they were there for this week, and you just made me miss her even more. So,
yo, I'm glad I could do that for you. Yeah, one of the things that I have tried to learn is, there's this thing, they always talk about work-life balance. You got to balance one thing and, sacrifice the other. And so in recent years, been trying to maintain that balance. I was like, you know what? Let's try this work-life integration thing, right? One thing doesn't have to sacrifice for another thing to be successful. How do we make them coexist? So if I'm doing a show, involving the family, if I'm doing my personal brand, if I'm working, like making sure that everything is in there and you don't have to worry about balance. And so this is just a manifestation of that. So
I love it.
Yeah, it is good. So guys, I normally try. How old is Ernest? They're asking how old are your kids or your kid?
She is 6. We have one daughter and she's 6. And nice. Like I said, you just made me miss her a lot.
Nice. My boy is 5. And he can't wait till he's 6. Anytime you ask him how old he is, he's not 5, he's almost 6. So it's crazy how like you're always looking at that next thing. So so Ernest, I want to ask you something. I normally, if I'm not doing a big old intro of who the person is and their career and things like that, I like to ask you, what are you famous for? Like, if folks hear Ernest, what comes to mind, either on a professional level or in your circles? Like for me, folks know that I love eating tacos, and I love telling stories. So I'm famous for storytelling and being a taco aficionado. So it can be that. So what are you famous for, man?
That's a tough question. Being challenging.
Being challenging.
It's funny because it has a few different meanings to it. So one is, one is I'm always challenging myself to try different things, and I also challenge other people to think different ways.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that popped into my mind. But when you mentioned that, they're like, in my life, through whatever circumstance it happened to be, I've done a lot of stuff. Amongst many other random things, I collect and restore straight razors. I collect as fountain pens. I placed second in a haiku writing contest. I've made and sold art in traditional Sumi style. I've done a TEDx talk. Like, I've built conferences. I've done all kinds of crazy stuff that I often don't really share because I feel like it's often too much to kind of like for folks to grasp. Like, but I've built motorcycles. I've done all kinds of stuff. So it just depends on who I'm speaking with.
You are the everyman. I'm just thinking about like those. So you're talking about like the straight razors for like they use for shaving? Is that what you're talking about?
I've been collecting those since 2010, I want to say. So I have some that I've had custom made. I've had some restored from the 40s. I've actually, one talk that I gave at a conference, the organizer gave me a straight razor that her great uncle used in World War II. And that's one of my, I hold that very dear, and I keep that one in a special place. So it's pretty cool.
Wow. We got some questions coming in here in the chat. Do I like tacos al pastor? My favorite tacos are carne asada, just straight up street tacos, steak, cilantro, onions, salsa. That is all. I can eat that. I just had tacos the other day, and I can have tacos again tonight now that I'm talking about it. It's Taco Tuesday. Let's make that happen. Megan is sharing challenging questions. You are the host of The Art of Meaningful Work. You've had a lot of phenomenal guests on your show. I actually just interviewed Askinosi.
Yeah.
Sean Askinosi. And you've had a lot of different folks that have come through. What is one of your most, I guess, challenging questions that you maybe ask your guests?
Well, I mean, it depends on where the conversation goes. I always look at how things have changed for them. That's one thing that I always look for. I find that with most of the people that I've interviewed that are now doing meaningful work, very often there's some kind of a instance, there's some kind of a change in trajectory in their life and how they start thinking about things. So that's what I'm always curious about, because what ends up happening is that most successful people are on some kind of trajectory. Something happens, they start rethinking things, and that's what actually gets them to shift their trajectory into more meaningful work. Which is what I was really curious about. So I'm always curious, like what's that inflection point that happened? It's not necessarily a challenging question, but I find it to be a really interesting one.
And actually leads, I had some questions in mind, but that's like a perfect segue, because do you remember the platform that they try to do? Is it Quibi? They were trying to do like these 15-minute, there's like 15-minute shows. They didn't really last very long. But it was like a 15-minute show. It was on a platform. It didn't really work out. But anyway, all that to say is, if I was to ask you to tell your hero story in a short, condensed version that includes that adversity and how you rose through to be where you're at today, in an abbreviated form, what would that sound like?
Man, it would be a I'll try to hit a couple of points, and then
Yeah.
I think it might be valuable to discuss some
Yeah.
ideas around meaningful work.
Yeah.
So I was born in Sarajevo, which was in ex-Yugoslavia, and I grew up there. I lived through war when I was 8 till I was about 10.
Hmm.
Eventually came to Canada, and so that kind of that's the abbreviated version of my childhood.
Yeah.
Went to school for electronics engineering, started working there, realized that wasn't really for me, and I made a
Hmm.
transition into marketing work. And then I made a transition from working for an organization to working on my own. So
Hmm.
I've had my own company that evolved from an agency into a consultancy, and I
Right.
used to for the 15 years prior to making a transition into executive coaching, I have done digital strategy, digital transformation work. I used to teach at 2 different universities and the Canadian Marketing Association. I put together programs. I ran conferences. I did all kinds. I'd spoken a bunch of keynotes at different conferences and stuff.
Yeah.
Below that, I'll share a couple of. I'll share 2 or 3 inflection points for me.
Yeah.
And when I started my business, I was chasing after money. That was my version of success, and I wanted all the things and to do all the things. And it eventually just started wearing a little bit thin, and I didn't really quite know what that was or what was changing.
Hmm.
And in late 2011, we found out that my mom had lung cancer.
Oh.
And in 2012, she passed away after 8 months. We found out, and that really that was one of those inflection points. It was one of those things where I was experiencing so much grief, and it was a major transition in a lot of my thinking that
Yeah.
accelerated a lot of things that I was thinking about before.
Hmm.
And then later that year, I came across, there's a lot of stuff, but I'm abbreviating here. Later that year, I came across an article by Sir Ray Avery in which he talked about you have 30,000 days of life to live in total. So you would prioritize different things.
Hmm.
And that really resonated with me, especially after my mom passed away. And I was like, well, time and what am I doing? And
Yeah.
is this the right thing? And what should I do with the rest of my time? And my mom passed away. I can see the kind of impact that she had on the people in her life. So it really got me to question and think about all those kind of things. And so I did a calculation based on my family history. I have about 26,000 days of life in total. And that gave birth to a podcast that was probably like my 3rd or 4th podcast called 26K, where I started interviewing people about the idea of meaningful work. Because I wanted to selfishly figure it out what that was so that I could do it, so that I could feel like I've done something meaningful in this life.
Yeah.
And and then I've interviewed through that podcast. I've interviewed 130 different authors and executives, entrepreneurs, artists, writers, and all that kind of stuff. That podcast has been archived for a number of years now.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening is that eventually people started coming to me and sending me notes and emails and inviting me for coffees and that kind of stuff to see how I could help them do meaningful work. And I didn't really know how.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was doing consulting work, so I would tell organizations what to do, and I was working with all kinds of national and international brands.
Yeah.
But to talk to someone who's seeking meaningful work, who's considering leaving their career to do something different, I didn't have the courage to do that.
Yeah.
And so, but that was another ping. And then several years later, I was, and this is something that was percolating for me for a while, and I fell into this deep depression, and I think this was around 2017 or so, and I remember sitting in our living room, or laying in our living room under a cover. It was a summer day, but I was just in cold sweat, shivering. It was probably one of the lowest points I've ever experienced. And normally what happens when I'm faced with adversity like that, I start researching things. And so I read, at that point, I just, I laid there for almost a whole day. And then in the afternoon, I just started researching things. So I read hundreds of journal articles. I listened to podcasts. I tried everything to get my eyes on in regards to depression and in regards to anxiety.
Yeah.
And one of the things that resonated with me then and resonates with me now is that if you think that the future is going to be worse than the way things are today, that's a major contributor to depression, and in some cases suicide too.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in that dark place, and that's when I made it took some time to percolate. I'm making this sound like it's very easy or smooth, but it wasn't. I came to this conclusion that the work that I was to be doing was one that would make the world a better place tomorrow than it is today. And then, fast forward a few more years, I discovered coaching. I went through a coach training program. I started doing that kind of work, and it really helped me realize that that was the calling that I felt, that was the right direction for me to go. And it gave me meaning in my work.
Right.
And which was something that I was, I love doing marketing. It was great, but I found like some of that was missing for me after so many years of it.
Yeah.
And so now making this transition and working with people one-on-one, helping them make some transformations in their life was really resonant for me. And then the last thing that happened, and I'll bring it into the present, I've had that in the back of my mind. You and I talked briefly about wildfires and smoke, and I've had in the back of my mind, climate change was one of the things, and the impacts of climate change were one of the things that was a contributor to me going into that deep depression, 2017. And it's more resonant for me now. And so what I am looking to do in terms of focusing on the kind of folks that I really want to help are the ones that are helping with climate change, clean tech, education, healthcare, and then food security as well. So those are some of the things that are really resonant for me. And those are the kinds of leaders that I am looking to connect with and support in their work. So that was the long version of the journey.
Yes. She's asking for her apples. Yes, go get your apples. I love that. So I mean, it's those were like the three. So it was like the passing of mom, and then the try, and then that giving you the perspective, like, okay, so we have X amount of time. How do we make that time meaningful? And fact finding, like gathering information, and then that led to folks reaching out and kind of like having to grapple with, okay, what am I actually, doing to, and then, that perspective on depression and mental health, and then figuring out, tying that work, helping people, coaching folks through that as what is meaningful work for you, but then also from an environmental perspective, being able to make the world versus like making your world, like the person that you're working with, a better place. Now the world in general, from a climate perspective.
I'm looking for people. I mean, climate is one of the perspectives that to me is an existential kind of level perspective. But we're also looking at, I mean, the kind of folks that I'm interested in working with would be, people that might be in biotech, people that are in AI solving bigger problems, people that are, it doesn't necessarily have to be closely related to reducing pollution, but as long as you're contributing. I mean, the way that I look at it, my filter is, if I can wake up today thinking that tomorrow is going to be better and the day after that is going to be better, I'm doing my work. And we are on a certain trajectory. You see it with you see it all over the place, like with racism and all kinds of coming to grips with, past in Canada with how Indigenous people were treated. There are so many things that are coming out, inequality, et cetera, and I would like to believe that this is one of those times where we can choose to build a future that's better, or we can choose to follow a trajectory where we're gonna end up in a Mad Max kind of world, and that's not really where I want to go.
Wow, man, and I want us to unpack some of that a little bit. Verse, like, two things mainly is the what themes and tenets of meaningful work that you have seen, but also from an executive coaching and executive development standpoint, some of the things that you've seen too. Just want to shout out some of the folks that are here on our chat that are joining us for the late afternoon show. We are here with Ernest. And tell me, how is it Barbaric? How do you pronounce
Barbaric? Is my official name, but just like you, my creation name is Barbaric. So I go with Barbaric.
Again.
Barbaric. Yeah, but I go with Barbaric. That's the way it's been for forever. So.
Yeah, sometimes making that switch. Megan is saying, come visit Memphis. We have folks that would want to meet Tim Salau, who is Mr. Future of Work. He deals a lot with tech and learning environments. He made this phenomenal tea, very big on mental health, and we got, Megan. We have, so just thanks to everybody that's in the chat. Vince, thank you so much for your questions here. I do want to understand from you, as folks are thinking about, aspirations. So one of the things that I've been learning as far as like meaningful work is that I've been able to define it in two ways, like either as a destination where it's like role specific, like I am finding or experiencing meaningful work in this position. It's very finite, or I feel like I will experience meaningful work in that position, like that role or that job is what's going to give me the sense of meaningfulness. And so in that perspective, some folks, that folks are like looking for the next thing, the next level, climbing up the ladder, within organizations, and they see the executive role. So vice president, president, this executive role is something, to be, from a positional leadership standpoint, something to be aspired to. Having worked with a lot of executives, coaching them, consulting, and things like that, what is a common misconception when it comes to being an executive, if you would?
There's a thread there that I'm going to put a pin in that I'd like us to circle back on, and that's this idea of those being two ways. So remind me of that.
Yes.
And there's a meta way of looking at it, which is the way that I've kind of approached a lot of my research.
Yeah.
So, what is a common misconception? I used to be afraid of talking to CEOs when I was younger because I always felt these were people that are somehow above or ahead of me. And then I've had experiences with the leaders that I've had in my career that reinforced a lot of that. And what I found is, having had my own business for the previous close to 20 years now, they're just people. They have challenges. They're just different.
Yeah.
And so what I find is there are leaders that have been elevated to leadership position just because they've been around. And oftentimes they don't necessarily have the leadership skills to lead properly and to lead in a way that's meaningful and engaging and inspiring. And then you have leaders that are working on those kind of crafts. Then you have people that have a more natural inclination to be an inclusive leader. So there's a lot of these different kinds of things. But at the end of the day, it's just a person doing a thing. I'll tell you, this might sound kind of silly, but this is a thought that I had recently. It might sound silly, and so I'll give you a warning, but it's a meat bag. Like I'm a meat bag. I'm a bag of like meat and bones, and so is somebody else. They just happen to be in a different place. And
meat bag in a corner office.
Right. And so that was one of the ways that I've changed some of my thinking about those things, for sure.
Interesting. Do you mind just reading that last question from Megan? If you can see the chat there, the last question on there, if you just read Megan's question.
Do your clients need to understand their values to engage with your coaching? Value work is part of what we do in coaching. And, what I was going to circle back to what Tim just mentioned was this idea of, either this position or an aspiring position. What I found is that there are a few common things amongst the people that were doing meaningful work. And one of them was understanding what your values are and being very clear on them. And I find that to be a necessary component of doing meaningful work. Now, how they're expressed and how you look at what your values are compared to someone else that might have the same word are going to be very different. And so there's a couple of other components that I found. Would that be helpful to share that?
Absolutely.
So one component, like I said, the first one is to get very clear on what your values are. And I found that having gone through when Simon Sinek launched years and years ago, there was this thing called the Why University or something. And then you have to try to figure your why and all this kind of stuff. And I tried looking at lists of words, but it wasn't until I had a coach lead me through a value exercise that I really then understood what it was and how it guides your decisions and how it impacts your life. And so that was one component of it. The second component of it is to really understand what your strengths and natural talents are. I find that some people have an easier time of doing certain things. And so I'm also sorry, like if I start sniffling for whatever reason, my allergies are coming and going these days. So that's where it's
all
coming
good.
from.
It's all good, man.
And so understanding what those natural raw talents are, because sometimes we don't see those in ourselves. And especially if you're a high achiever, you're looking to challenge yourself all the time, drive. And so you're leaning into your weaknesses, you're improving stuff, you're always improving things. And sometimes you don't see what you bring to the table. So having that reflected is another component. And finally, I think this is the most important one in pretty much everybody that I've interviewed that has recognize that they do meaningful work. There's always an element of service or contribution. It's very rarely that it is about them. So if you know, the example that you used earlier is that if you view your work as I'm a leader and I want to go to an executive position, that's very intrinsic. That's very extrinsic. That's very self-focused. Versus something along the lines of I am contributing to, let's say, for example, if you're working in health, I'm contributing to, helping solve cancer. And so you view your work very differently. And then if you're doing your work in service of that, then that is what changes the game.
Dude, that is, you can't see it on here, but I have goosebumps on my skin because the things that you're sharing are so aligned. I've only been doing this meaningful work for the last year. I just started top of 2020 where I said, hey, I am going to take on the moniker of Mr. Meaningful Work selfishly as well. Like I need to figure it out for myself. Like I'm always getting pulled. And so I'm pulling myself in so many different directions. I need to figure out why I'm losing focus, what I need to focus on, what is meaningful work for me. And I'm talking to folks, I'm interviewing folks, I'm doing a blog about like my own learning. But over this time, and I'm researching too, I'm reading papers, I'm reading books, I'm reading articles, like I'm trying to really download all this stuff. And 4 main things have come up, and you touched on 3 of them, which is like, this is like, it's affirming for me. Is like, okay, like we came about it differently. You've obviously been doing it for a long time, but it shows that there are common themes in this meaningful work stuff. One of the things is permission, right? Like, how do you give yourself permission? How do you like, in order to give permission, you have to have ownership. You have to have ownership of your values. You have to have ownership and autonomy of your time, and like how you do things. And so the permission aspect, but the other 2 that you talked about was your strengths, and that we call that perfection, or your ability to like pursue mastery. Like how do you find what you're good at and continue to get better at it and get meaningfully recognized for it, right? Like getting the proper recognition to be able to get to that level and get affirmation for that. And then finally, purpose, something that is outside of yourself, something that contributes to the bigger world. We use the ikigai. Have you seen that ikigai? You know what I'm talking about? Like, so, what the world needs, what you're good at, what you can get paid for. And so you find that convergence, and it helps figure out, what is purpose for me, or in the organization, is it a purpose-driven organization? If I'm still searching for my own purpose, I can at least align myself with an organization that's relatively clear about their purpose and how they're impacting the world. So, there's a lot of overlap in the themes that you've seen and the themes that we've been able to find in our meaningful work journeys. That's awesome, dude.
There's one more element, and that this is something I've come to recently that I haven't written about a lot. And that is, and this comes also in line with being a leader, and that's enrolling people in a future. And so the way that I'm understanding it now is that if you have a vision of the kind of future you want to live in or work in, that's what gives you a direction. And I find that the organizations that have a purpose, generally that purpose is something that is, I don't like calling it aspirational. I look at it as this is the kind of future that we're working towards. And so everything that you do, as long as it's contributing to that kind of future, you're doing meaningful work.
Nice. Nice. I love this question. She's talking about strengths. Megan is really big. She's becoming a strengths coach through Gallup. She's doing a lot of
Mm.
phenomenal work in that area. She asked you, what do you know what one of your daughter's strengths are?
I'm going to call it perseverance rather than stubbornness. She's inherited, it's funny. She's inherited a lot of, she's inherited a lot of traits from me, which are, depending on the context, can be really good or it can be really hard to parent.
Yeah, perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, if you would.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I just heard of Ikigai the first time on Mondays, Higher Grounds. Awesome. At Adventist Health, we have this morning coffee talk called Higher Grounds, and so they were talking about Ikigai there. It's great to see our Adventist Health folks that are joining us here as well. We're coming to the bottom of our time. One thing I did want to ask you about. So what excites you these days? So you've been doing the podcast, you've been doing executive coaching, you've been doing a lot of different things. What is something that you like that energizes you and you look forward to every day, every week, what have it?
The way that my personality is, I'm very energized by overcoming things. So like when I get to put a new, with COVID, we had a chance. I'll give you a couple of things. This one's a lot more down to earth. With COVID, I haven't been to a gym in a long time, but I just bought a squat cage here about a month ago. So I have it in my office. And so every time I get a new PR, that's energizing for me.
Nice.
In terms of something that I'm really looking forward to, so I've started connecting with some accelerators, and specifically folks in clean tech, and that's where I am interested in looking for opportunities to partner or do some work together or support those kind of leaders. So I'm really that's one of the things that's really keeping me good.
Nice, dude. I love it. And how can folks get in touch with you? What's a way that we can support you in the work that you're doing? What's a good way for our community to stay engaged with you?
I'm pretty easy to find. I'm present almost everywhere, but I'm most active on LinkedIn. That'll be about it. So funny enough, when you messaged me, I still didn't make the transition, but I made a transition from art of meaningful work to leaders of change. In line with, it almost feels like there was this maturation process where I was trying to figure out what meaningful work is. And then it took a long time to figure out what does that mean for me. And now the podcast is an expression of that. And and that was kind of the journey, and that's the transition. So if you listen to the podcast, it's called Leaders of Change. We published our first interview last week, and there's a bunch more coming and a lot more content on there as well. So two things, easy to find online, and podcast.
Leaders of Change. And is that Apple, Spotify, anywhere you can find podcasts? Everywhere. I love it.
Find the podcast. I'm just about to it's funny because there were these like massive gaps in between episodes as I was figuring life out. And now I'm back on it. It's like things are converging, which is exactly where I want it to be.
Very nice. Leaders of Change. That is a good name. Thank you, Joel. Well, guys, that is the bottom of our show. We are so happy that we got to spend some time with Ernest Barbaric here. He is host of Leaders of Change. You can find him out. It's just ernestbarbaric.com, right? You have the whole website where it shows, everything that he's working on. TED Talk. Check out the TED Talk that he's done, The Art of Meaningful Work. They know when I'm wrapping up because they know we're going to play music at the end. They're already peeking through. They're already peeking through the door. But guys, we're excited. Next week is going to be our season finale of the late afternoon show for season 3, and we have a very, very special group of guests. I was able to sit down with our CEO of Adventist Health and our Chief Culture Officer, Scott Reiner, and now you're making me forget. They're gonna be like, she doesn't even know his boss's name. What is my Chief Culture Officer's name? You guys made me forget. Newmeyer, Joyce Newmeyer. These guys. So Scott Reiner, our CEO at Adventist Health, Joyce Newmeyer, our Chief Culture Officer. It's just beautiful because we're out here doing meaningful work and they're supporting. And Adventist Health is doing a lot of great stuff around that. So that'll be our season finale next week. Go and check out Ernest on all of the platforms here. Let us play our outro music. You guys ready? Come on. This is what you guys came here for. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Catch us next week. Catch us on MrMeaningfulWork.com. If you have any thoughts, if you have any questions, if you have any contributions to who we can have on the show, what we should talk about, email me, tim@MrMeaningfulWork.com. Hey, get it. Hey. Get it, bust it down, get it. Bye. We're